As we begin here, acknowledging the ground upon which we stand today and recognizing the indigenous people who have served as its stewards for millennia to the present moment. Here in this ancient and sovereign landscape, Pueblo elders have long said, wherever we go, we leave our breath behind us. An invocation recognizing those who came before us and how their life force remains with us long after they have gone. The vitality of breath son las palabras y los hechos, the deeds and words that we leave behind, and they are what it means to belong to a community. I woke up this morning and thought of something I heard Eduardo Galeano say once. He said he ate news for breakfast. These days, while it's so hard to listen to the news, I gravitate to the reading, as he did, I think. As I consume stories around us, I think about how he would have written about them. I learned that lasers have revealed a grand Mayan civilization beneath layers of forests where the ground and trees have perhaps necessarily hidden it. The descendants already knew it was there. From the accounts that come from across the world, or as close as Nambe, we learned that brutality and terror continue to exist in our homes. The spiritual, emotional, and psychological wounding that radiates across the generations and has contemporary implications for our sons and our daughters, internalized wounds that are only beginning to be measured. We recognize in the end that the rich truly have inherited the earth, that power remains in the hands of those who are predominantly white and male. We learn that the world has been turned upside down forever, a revelation that comes not only when we perceive the rise and fall of empires, and the gradual collapse of empires as it plays out upon the world stage before us. The news is not just in the papers, he would have reminded us, or in the television. If we lean in and as we will see and hear the siren message carried from the bees who arrive in February. And yet we also learn about the delicacy and strength of our humanity. We see it in the small acts of courage, of kindness, a mayor in Puerto Rico who dares to speak up. We recognize that beauty remains palpable in our senses, in our eyes, in our ears, all around us. We recognize in between because of the men and women who fight for hope, curiosity, imagination. And I know and I have to believe that recovery and healing and transcendence begins with a critical remembering, which is precisely what brings us to this man and his words that we gather around this evening. From his words, a celebration of contradictions. Desatar las voces, desensoñar los sueños, turn loose the voices, undream the dreams. Through my writing, I try to express the magical reality, which I find at the core of the hideous reality of America. In these countries, the god Elewa carries death in the nape of his neck and life in his face. Every promise is a threat, every loss a discovery. Courage is born of fear, certainty of doubt. Dreams announce the possibility of another reality, and out of delirium emerges another kind of reason. What it all comes down to is that we are the sum of our efforts to change who we are. Identity is no museum piece sitting stock still in a display case, but rather the endlessly astonishing synthesis of the contradictions of everyday life. I believe in that fugitive faith, he writes, worthy of belief for its great likeness to the human animal, accursed yet holy, and to the mad adventure that is living in the world. That from the Book of Embraces. Eduardo, naciste con un nombre, Hughes, but in an act of reinvention, you took your mother's maiden name. Although you, I think, might have poked fun at the DNA commercials, had you lived to see them, you wrote about the fact that your grandparents connected you to Great Britain, Italy, Spain, and Germany. What would that commercial look like, Susan? Though you wrote in We Say No, I always knew that I was as Latin American as the stones of Machu Picchu or the most humble pebble in my country. Although you became the most prolific writers of all time, till the very end you doubted your own writing. You devoted your life to a conversation with the places and the people of the world, primarily these Americas that gave you birth, and framed it as a plática, which, as you write in Memory of Fire, was done to, quote, share her secrets, to ask her from what difficult clay she was born, from what acts of love and violation she comes. In your writing, the wisdom that sits in places was drawn from the testimonies that others sat down and shared with you. De los ancianos, de los jóvenes, de los que tienen y de los que faltan. You saw that writing was scrawled on the walls of barrios across the land, and you found it buried in las notas de pie, and you encouraged those notas to walk. From los Días Siguientes, written in 1963, through the open veins of Latin America in 1971, to your last work, you told us, if we had not guessed, who you were, el cazador de historias, the hunter of stories. We miss you more than ever, but you left the world and your words, which continue to inspire us to do something, make something, fight, to forgive, to love, and above all, to remember, recordis, to pass it back through your heart. And ultimately, as many of us grew up with that word, and he called it to our attention, recordar is to awaken. My friend and my brother shared with me this morning about the impact that Galeano made on his son Jose. He wrote, "My favorite memory," Miguel told me, "was watching my youngest son Jose experience open veins, almost as I did. And it served to help him heal and reawaken to his community warrior self. Then seeing the look on his face when I took him to see Galeano a couple of years ago at the Lenze. Miguel, for all the wounded who need to become warriors every single day fighting in the streets, I think of Eduardo's words. Celebration of marriage of heart and mind. ¿Pa qué escribe uno? Si no es para juntar sus pedazos. Why does one write if not to put one's pieces together? From the moment we enter school and church, education chops us into little pieces. It teaches us to divorce soul from body and mind from heart. The fishermen of the Colombian coast must have been learned doctors of ethics and morality, for they invented the word senti pensante, feeling and thinking, to define a language that speaks the truth. Although I had heard Eduardo speak for the first time when I was an undergraduate student, I've been devouring his work ever since. It is not until I was a state historian that I found myself face to face with him at a small gathering at the Santa Fe Union School. I was so nervous and excited that I began to quote from him, to him, from Memory of Fire, using his words almost to introduce myself. I am not a historian. I'm a writer obsessed with remembering. And above all, Latin America, intimate land, but condemned to amnesia. I will never forget the look on his face. Perhaps the kind that a star looks down at a crazed groupie. Y aquí llegó Galeano, he said, teasing. Here arrives, Galeano. Sabes más mis palabras que yo mismo. I was embarrassed for a moment before I probably started quoting again. I'm not sure what Eduardo would have thought about tonight, but we gathered to pay tribute, if not to him solely, then to all of those voices that he carried like nesting dolls, one inside the other, inside the other. Let me take a moment to thank Dorothy Massey and Collected Works for hosting this event tonight. I know that Galeano loved independent bookstores and knew that we have to continue to fight for their existence and for the existence of books, the tangible books. And above all, I am so honored to be joined on this stage tonight by some of my favorite writers and poets who I have seen over the years learn to make words walk and jump and run. As you can see, I will intersperse my own reading between each one. I can't help myself. Let me introduce the first of our readers, one of my favorite people in the world. Demetria Martinez is a poet, writer, and activist. She's never seen a fine line between the two, I don't think. Her books include the widely translated Mother Tongue, a novel inspired by her indictment and subsequent acquittal on federal charges relating to conspiring to smuggle refugees into the United States as part of the sanctuary movement in the 1980s. Work that continues to resonate to this day. She coordinates poetry workshops at the Santa Fe County Youth Detention Center. Please bring your hands together for Demetria Martinez.